So I'm just going to go through some of my experience or our experiences together, show you a few photos, and they'll hopefully give you a bit of an idea of actually what the volunteer did. And of course, the first thing the volunteer did was get in a plane at Tullamarine, and 3.5 hours later, just looking out the window, playing with an iPad, ended up in Cairns. And what you need to realise, possibly, which I didn't realise, is just how far away Cairns was actually from us. I thought it was somewhere near Brisbane, but anyhow, it's 1,000 kilometres north of the Tropic of Capricorn, so it's near the equator, it's a long way away. And this drawing here was just sent to us recently, the last couple of days. It shows Cairns, and it shows the infected area out from Cairns. And what we did was, we did a bit of searching around Cairns, but basically the focus for Biosecurity Queensland was to focus in this area here to see if the incursion was going further out. So one of the things that we did first activity actually was to go out, and this is at Port Douglas, this is Mike, and we were given a booklet with pictures of plants on it. We were given a GPS and a log, and we went out and found plants that were flowering, identified them, and logged them with their GPS, and that data sheet was sent back to Biosecurity Queensland for future reference. Another thing that we did was we went down the streets of Cairns, and this is where this was taken, and looking at these exotic plants, tried to find any bees on them, and in particular Serrana. And we had great difficulty finding many bees really, mellifera or Serrana. So if you look very carefully on this slide here, you won't see any Serrana. But the next slide, if you look carefully, can you see a Serrana there? Yeah. Good. It's a bit out of focus, but there's one there. This is called coral vine, and that was one plant we found was pretty attractive at certain times of the day. Here's another plant, and this, Kevin, we almost named it Kevin's wattle, didn't we, Kevin? Because we got accidentally called to a nursery at a place called Urunga, because the person that worked there had thought he'd seen Asian honeybees in his backyard. And so Kevin thought, get out and have a bit of walking down the driveway, and looked at this wattle, Sims wattle, and saw Asian honeybees on it. So that was actually a random accidental finding of Asian honeybees, a long way, about 50 or so kilometres out from Cairns. So that just indicates there might be a lot more of them around than what we think, because this was a very, very accidental finding. So the technique is then to put what's called a bait station next to the plant, and the bait station's on a movable stand. It's got a cover, and inside here is a tray of lavender flavoured sugar syrup, which the bees then become accustomed to taking. And over a number of hours and days, they then get used to getting the sugar from there rather than from the plant. Well, we look to see where the bees are flying if we can. Okay, they're flying in that direction, we move the stand in that direction. And you can see that it's out in a more open location. And we were accompanied also by some scientists, Dr. Dennis Anderson. If you have a look at the country that we're going through, I'm looking at this like, God, you know, looking out there, all these trees and this bush, how could we possibly ever find this Serrana? And if we did find one, then there must be a lot more to find, perhaps. But this one was a particularly tricky one, wasn't it, Kevin? I think it took us about 10 days. Kevin actually was a bit disappointed after 1 week of moving the stand over here, and then they'd fly, and then moving it over here. They kept on giving us conflicting directions. They're actually, this is a bit of an embankment, the road's up there, and they're in a hole going under a rock, and we kept walking past this, and of course kept on getting different directions. So that was a bit of surprise that we actually found really in the ground. This one was pretty easy to eradicate because we sprayed, all the workers, the biosecurity ground stuff, sprayed this with a sort of an insecticide, covered the entrance up and with paper toweling, and that's how they were destroyed. But take your breath away when we found out what they had to use to kill them. It was something that was advertised not to kill or be harmful to honeybees. Oh, no. Because they couldn't go against a regulation of using insecticide. Most of the cans say harmful to honeybees, so couldn't use any of those, but they did use one that was a little bit harmful but a bit slow and probably painful, which is mortine sensitive, which didn't have written on it harmful to honeybees. Now, who can see the Apis cerana on this beautiful grevillea? You could actually put the flower in tea to give it sugar. There's so much nectar coming from it, and pretty easy to see. So this was at right near the edge of the Cairns. 2 or 3, maybe 4 days, we traced it. And in fact, I didn't do much of the tracing. It was mainly the workers, but I sort of helped. Just shows how good the workers are. Just saw this from about 50 metres away, or maybe 20 metres away. A fair way away. It's up in a small hole up there. Remember, these bees are much 2/3 the size of Apis mellifera, so it's pretty hard to see these bees going in and out of a hole that high up. Okay, now question, how can we possibly spray this one? The one in the ground is easy, but this one, how can we spray that?
Get the bees to carry it back.
Okay, cherry picking we've got, yes.
Chainsaw.
Chainsaw, yes, we did consider the chainsaw option, which we actually did do to a dead tree, but live trees are...
can climb it in about 10 minutes.
A climber can climb it in about 10 minutes, that's a good answer. Those careful observers will notice that the answer is actually in the picture. That up that tree there is a climbing person. Where is he? He's amongst that foliage. So we'll go to the next slide, which is the final one. We were gasping. Our breath was being taken away by this male climbing up this. He said it's the slipperiest tree he'd ever climbed and one of the most difficult. So he climbed out on the branch, and then with our very powerful insecticide sprayed in the hole, and of course that's putting him in danger of waiting for them to die. They were actually, there was a branch there which he pushed off and that let them out, so they actually get on his body there. And he's attached by a rope. If he slips, there's a rope on this branch that will save him.